Hello and a very warm welcome to a brand new edition of World Panorama with me, Frank Pereira. As always, let's begin with the top international stories. US President Barack Obama declares war on Islamic State militants, announces a limited offensive that will extend to Syria as well. Dutch investigators present initial report into the MH17 crash. Findings state that high-velocity objects broke up the plane from outside. Sushma Swaraj calls Afghanistan India's first strategic partner, pledges all possible support for its reconstruction. And Marin Cilic overwhelms his Japanese opponent to lift the maiden Grand Slam title. Cilic defeats Kei Nishikori in straight sets in the US Open final. Our top focus on the show this week, a day after US President Barack Obama unveiled US strategy against IS, mixed reactions are pouring in from across the world. However, the situation remains grim as the CIA released new data revealing that the number of IS fighters has tripled over previous estimates. Here's more.
Top leaders across the world rallied behind the US on the war against IS. Israel and Iran endorsed the US strategy, though Obama faces some opposition from his own country on whether his strategy is strong enough, especially on the issue of US boots on the ground.
Israel fully supports President Obama's call for united actions against ISIS. All civilized countries should stand together in the fight against radical terrorism that sweeps across the Middle East.
That I'm not sure that we're doing all that we can do to defeat this terrorist threat. And if our goal is to eliminate ISIL, there's a lot of doubt whether the plan that was outlined by the president last night is enough to accomplish that mission.
Germany and Britain said that they will not take part in anti-IS airstrikes in Syria. Syria hit back at the US plan to go ahead with airstrikes, reiterating that any foreign intervention in Syria would be an act of aggression unless it is approved by Damascus.
Britain will not be taking part in any airstrikes in Syria. I can be very clear about that. We've already had that discussion in our parliament last year, and we won't be revisiting that position.
أي عمل كان من أي نوع كان دون موافقة الحكومة السورية هو اعتداء على سوريا، وبالتالي ليس هناك من إمكانية للحديث عن رد السوري على أي اعتداء على سوريا.
But it's not going to be easy. CIA has released new data showing that the number of ISIS fighters has gone up to 31,500, more than 3 times the number previously estimated. This reflects an increase in members because of stronger recruitment since June, following battlefield successes and declaration of a caliphate, greater battlefield activity, and additional intelligence.
Joining me on the show this week is former Ambassador Ishrat Aziz. Ambassador, welcome to the show.
Nice to be here.
You know, Barack Obama's address to the nation was waited, very eagerly by the entire world, because after months of silence, everyone wanted to know what the US would do as far as Islamic State is concerned. Now that Obama has spoken, several other countries have come out, and there has been a mixed response as such to the strategy against IS. What's your take on the strategy?
First of all, the mix is not very even, you know what I mean?
Yes.
There is not that much support as far as I can see. I think we have to consider a few things in this connection. One is the timing of President Obama's announcement. As you know, the whole thing about IS in Iraq has come into prominence since the beheading of 2 journalists.
Yes.
Don't also forget that there are going to be elections in the United States in November. So without underestimating the threat, or the potential threat, I should say, that IS poses if it remains unchecked, I do not think that there is any need for alarm or yes, I mean, there is no need for alarm. As far as India is concerned, I think we must remember our own interests in the region, and the immediate interest is the fact that we have Indian nationals living there in the area controlled by IS. In fact, it is said that about 40 of them are captives. So I think we have also to constantly keep in mind, whatever we say, whatever we do, keep the security of our nationals there in our mind.
Interesting that you brought up India, of course. Just a couple of days ago, or a few days ago, earlier this week, we saw that, India has come out and said that they're going to support the Kurds there to ensure that there is some kind of stability in the region. What do you make of that?
Well, that is one way of dealing with the problem. As you know, Barack Obama himself has said, apart from the fact that he has undertaken to carry out heavy and sustained bombing, he has still not committed himself to troops.
Yes.
And that's very unlikely that he will, but
and he has come under a lot of criticism for that. I mean, that's where the main criticism really comes from, isn't it?
That is true. But he has also said that he will seek the support of the European nations, and he will also seek the support of the Arab countries in the region. As you know, John Kerry has been to the area, and he has met the Saudi leadership. So that is his strategy, to involve other countries, because without their cooperation and participation, I said, not just cooperation, participation, it will be very difficult to deal with the problem. But looking at it long term, let us be also clear. It is not so difficult to defeat the IS soldiers, but it will be very difficult to eliminate them as a guerrilla force, because as you know, guerrillas have a way of going underground.
Yes, they do, and that's the brand of warfare that the US's enemies have used against them in the past, and they know that they can be successful that way as well. Another significant development that has taken place this week is the formation of the new government in Iraq. Now, it has Obama's stamp all over it. But they've called it inclusive. They've said everyone has been involved in the government. But what kind of a role do you see the new Iraqi government playing as far as the entire situation is concerned in the region?
It all depends on the kind of policies and approach that the government follows internally, first of all. Internally means, is it genuinely inclusive? Not just inclusive cabinet, but inclusive in all its policies, in all its dealings, in all its decisions. Because as you know, the main criticism against Nouri al-Maliki was that he was not being inclusive.
Yes.
And it's no secret that America was very insistent that it should be an inclusive government with inclusive policies. So, in fact, one of the biggest problems of that whole area is the failure to what I would call develop inclusive identity. You know what I mean?
Yes.
That a country which consists of diversity must have an inclusive kind of identity, and developing that requires effort. And I'm afraid that's one thing which most of those regimes fail to do, and that's why you have the problem of which IS is a manifestation.
Yes.
Don't forget, I mean, IS was earlier, from all reports, IS has come from Syria, because there were fighters against the Assad regime in Syria. And it is really an offshoot of those fighters, or certain groups of fighters, because there were too many fighters.
No, you know, even one of the mistakes that the Obama administration made earlier was that, they called it a splinter group, and they said, it's not going to get anywhere, and that's why they just let them grow. But now they've shown how powerful and how much of an impact they can have in the region. And now a CIA report has come out and said that, the group itself has grown threefold, and it has to be stopped immediately. I mean, so who's to blame here?
Well, as you know, there is a French phrase which in English translates as, the more the things change, the more they remain the same. There have been past instances where you have sort of nursed jihadis who have then turned against you. I mean, I don't have to enumerate them. It is also a little bit embarrassing to do that. But it has happened, and it is exactly what has happened. And there were many who had been warning that don't do these things. But sometimes when you follow an approach which has tunnel vision, which is short-sighted, for today's gains, you forget about tomorrow's long-term problems that can arise from your approach. It is bound to happen. It has happened. And I am afraid it will keep happening unless, I always say, you know, one thing, when I say take a long-term view, people throw in my face the famous line of John Keynes, that in the long run we will all be dead. It's true. I say, but I should imagine my grandchildren would still be around. So why don't we take a little long-term view of things? And the whole perspective changes when you take a somewhat longer-term view of things, a broader view of things. Then you can avoid these mistakes. But as you can well imagine, the longer you think, the longer term you think, the broader the vision you take, the more difficult it becomes to come to a conclusion.
Yes, indeed. Let's talk about, Obama's position and Obama's stand as far as the entire issue is concerned. Let's not forget he's drawn a lot of criticism in the recent past because he's not said anything about Islamic State or what the US is going to do as far as, the Islamic State is concerned. Do you believe he was pushed into making this particular speech just, on the eve of 9/11?
You can see very clearly that he's doing it very reluctantly. I mean, that is very clear. He is doing it reluctantly because he did not want to. He wanted to leave a legacy of having ended wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. Now he will leave a war. It is also, I have no doubt in my mind that without what they call putting boots on the ground, you cannot deal with this problem. And that is one thing, mind you, he's getting a lot of support from public and also Congress. There is a significant amount of support, but nobody is suggesting go all out because they know the problem of going all out. No doubt that Obama has gone into it very reluctantly. My own view is that because of the public beheading and the forthcoming elections, he had to take a decision. He just cannot postpone decision.
All right, we'll have to leave it at that. Thank you so much, Ambassador Aziz, for joining us on the program this week and taking us through this very crucial world development that has taken place. Moving on, now External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj arrived in the Tajikistan capital, which is hosting the 13th summit of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, with security being the focus for all member countries. Earlier, she held wide-ranging talks with Afghan President Hamid Karzai on political and security situation in the war-torn country and agreed to intensify cooperation in areas like security and defense.
External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj on Thursday arrived in Tajikistan capital Dushanbe for a summit of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. The summit will focus on cooperation in the fields of economy, security and people-to-people exchanges. Earlier, Sushma Swaraj concluded her maiden visit to Afghanistan by reiterating India's commitment to rebuilding Afghanistan. Speaking at a function where Afghanistan President Hamid Karzai was presented the nation's largest flagpole, Sushma assured the host nation of every possible assistance in all spheres.
India will always be Afghanistan's first strategic partner. We are committed to assisting Afghanistan in whatever manner is possible within our means.
India also pledged $1 million to the Afghan government for the development of Wazir Akbar Khan Hill area, where a 16 to 90 feet flag on top of a 207 feet flagpole was hoisted. Swaraj held wide-ranging talks with President Hamid Karzai on political and security situation in the host country. Foreign Minister Swaraj has now visited 4 of the 8 SAARC nations since taking charge.
Well, we'll slip into a short break now, but on the other side, we'll tell you what caused flight MH17 to crash in eastern Ukraine. Stay tuned, we'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching Rajya Sabha Television. Well, a preliminary report into the crash of the Malaysian Airlines flight MH17 has ruled out technical fault or the actions of the crew for the disaster. Instead, it has suggested that objects penetrating from outside caused the mishap. Here are the details.
High-velocity objects broke up MH17 is the conclusion of Dutch investigators probing the crash of the Malaysia Airlines flight over eastern Ukraine. The Dutch Safety Board has ruled out technical or human error but says it is too early to say if a missile was fired.
The damage observed in the forward sections of the aircraft appears to indicate that the aircraft was penetrated by a large number of high-energy objects from the outside the aircraft.
It will take at least almost a year before we come to a final report.
The report comes just days after a ceasefire backed by Kiev and Moscow came into force on Friday. Kiev and the West have accused pro-Russian separatists of shooting down the plane with a missile supplied by Moscow. Russia has blamed government forces for the attack.
En toch moeten we oppassen voor te snel getrokken conclusies. Nederland geeft leiding aan alle onderzoeken. Stap voor stap werken de deskundigen richting onweerlegbare conclusies.
The Boeing 777 was blown up mid-air on 17th of July over rebel-held territory in eastern Ukraine, killing all 298 passengers and crew on board. Last week, the Malaysian Prime Minister Najib Razak said he wanted to send more investigators to gather evidence. The investigators are expected to give a final report by July 2015.
Well, much else has been unfolding around the world. Here's a quick wrap of the other international news of the week.
At least 28 Syrian rebel leaders, including senior leader Hassan Aboud, were killed in a deadly blast in the northwestern province of Idlib on Tuesday. The rebel leaders belong to the Ahrar al-Sham militant group, which is a hardline Islamist group. Britain and France secured the top jobs in the incoming European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker's new team, which faces the task of tackling Europe's stagnant economy. Britain's Jonathan Hill has been put in charge of financial services regulations, while former French Finance Minister Pierre Moscovici has been named Economic Affairs Commissioner. 3 of the 7 powerful new posts have gone to women. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has pledged $50 million to support emergency efforts to contain West Africa's Ebola outbreak. This comes on top of other funds announced by the UK and the US governments as well as the European Union. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation said that it would release the funds immediately to UN agencies and international organizations to help them buy supplies and scale up the emergency response in affected countries. More than 2,300 people have died of Ebola since December 2013. Apple unveiled its much-awaited products, including a watch in San Francisco on Tuesday. Apple iWatch is the first new product to be developed under Chief Executive Officer Tim Cook's leadership. It is a timepiece tethered to the iPhone that will combine health and fitness tracking with communications. Cook presented it after introducing the new iPhone 6 and 6 Plus. The watch will come in 3 different collections.
Well, let's shift focus now and bring you up to date with the latest sports news from around the world in our Sports Beat.
Croatia's Marin Cilic won his first Grand Slam title, beating Japan's Kei Nishikori 6-3, 6-3, 6-3 in the US Open final at Flushing Meadows, with 17 aces, including 4 in one game. The Japanese number 1 led the Croatian 5-2 in their career head-to-head, but that proved for nothing as Cilic took the momentum of his semi-final win over Roger Federer into the big one. The 14th seed closed out the straight sets victory 6-3 in the third set. Cilic became the first man outside the top 10 to list the US Open trophy since Pete Sampras in 2002. Serena Williams beat Caroline Wozniacki in straight sets to win her 6th US Open and 18th Grand Slam title. The American, ranked #1 in the world, won 6-3, 6-3 at Flushing Meadows in New York. The victory moves her to joint 4th in the all-time list of major winners, alongside Martina Navratilova and Chris Evert. Williams, who is 32, has now won 3 successive titles at the US Open, the scene of her first Grand Slam triumph 15 years ago. Her dominance was such that she won the title without dropping a set or more than 3 games in a single set. Lewis Hamilton turned a poor start into a dramatic victory ahead of his Mercedes teammate Nico Rosberg in Sunday's Italian Grand Prix, cutting the Germans' lead in their bitter battle for the Drivers' Championship from 29 points to 22 with 6 races remaining. It was Hamilton's 6th win this year, his 2nd at Monza and the 28th of his career. He needs just 3 wins to equal Nigel Mansell's British record of Grand Prix successes. American Billy Horschel held off late charges from Sergio Garcia and Bubba Watson to capture the BMW Championship and claim a strong chance to win the US PGA playoffs. The 27-year-old American, who clinched his maiden victory on the US circuit at the 2013 Zurich Classic of New Orleans, sank clutch par putts from 8 feet at the 15th and 16th on the way to a 14-under total of 266.
Finally, of course, here's a look at what's creating a buzz in show business, a look at all the latest from the world of entertainment.
Actor Richard Kiel, best known for playing metal-mouthed James Bond villain Jaws, died on Wednesday at a hospital in Fresno, California. He was 74. Standing at 7 feet 2 inches tall, Kiel's imposing height made him one of the most recognizable villains in the James Bond film franchise, playing Jaws in 1977's The Spy Who Loved Me and 1979's Moonraker, opposite Roger Moore's Bond. Kiel started out with small jobs as a nightclub bouncer, a cemetery plot salesman and a math teacher at night school. Kiel also appeared in golf comedy Happy Gilmore with Adam Sandler. The Sherlock Emmy winner Benedict Cumberbatch is back in the award mix in a fantastic biopic on Alan Turing, the British codebreaker who helped win World War II, only to be imprisoned for being gay in Morton Tilden's The Imitation Game, which will make its premiere at the 2014 Toronto International Film Festival. It's a worthy tribute to one of history's forgotten heroes and should spell more awards glory for the ever-versatile Cumberbatch, who's fresh off an Emmy win for the BBC miniseries Sherlock. Actor Theo James is attached as the lead in the 5th film in the vampire action franchise which Lakeshore Entertainment is currently developing. James, who played a vampire named David in 2013's Underworld Awakening, will be the central character in the new film, which is not a reboot but rather an expansion of the existing universe. Sources say there was an option on James because of his work on the previous film. Shooting for the film is expected to begin in the spring. Peter Gabriel was named a prog god at the 2014 Progressive Music Awards in London on Thursday. The former Genesis frontman, whose outlandish stage outfits included dressing as a flower and a fox during his days with the band, has been recognized for his contribution at the Progressive Music Awards. Gabriel follows figures such as Jethro Tull, star Ian Anderson and Wakeman in taking the Prog God Prize.
Well, Mexico has broken 2 Guinness World Records by assembling 9,450 tacos, a local culinary delight, to create the largest taco de plaza. It was served in the world's largest clay pot. Take a look at this Mexican delight. We'll leave you with this. Thank you for watching.